Okay, what's the question? 41 on 2.4. So remember, this was about circles. And it says, so this is kind of an interesting one, just the way that it's written. It says 2x minus 3 quantity squared, 2y squared equals 8. Okay, and you've got to remember what the standard form of a circle is, what that graph-friendly form of a circle is. It's x minus h quantity squared, y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. So a perfect square with x all by itself, okay, no number out in front. Perfect square with y all by itself, no number out in front other than a 1, right? Okay, and then just a plain old number over here. We take the square root of that number and we get the radius, okay? So what's wrong with this in comparison with this? Alex? Yeah, there's a 2 in front. There's a 2 in front of this and a 2 in front of that. So what could I divide by that would get rid of those 2's? Yeah, let's divide this side by 2 and this side by 2. Now, if you haven't seen this before, most people naturally do this, but we want to make sure everybody's clear on how this works. What I'm doing is I'm dividing both sides by 2. So I've correctly shown the work here. What a lot of people do naturally is one of two things. Okay, they just say, oh, well, I'm just going to cancel a 2 from everything. Okay, what you're really doing is you're really breaking this up into that piece, that term, this term right here divided by the 2, this term right here divided by the 2, and of course on this side we just get a 4. Okay, so you can cancel the 2 with the 2 now because those are each factors. Cancel the 2 with the 2 there because those are each factors. The other thing that you could do is you could take a 2 out of each of these. You could write it this way: 2 and then x minus 3 quantity squared plus y squared all over 2, and then you could cancel that. Either way, we're going to end up with this: x minus 3 quantity squared plus y squared equals 4. So again, you only need two things on a circle. You just need to know what the center is and what the radius is. Can we look at that and know what the center is? Opposite of the number with the x, so that's going to be a 3. What's the number with the y? A 0. Okay, and what's the radius? Square root of that would be 2, so there we go. Okay, written a little bit weird, but remember, if it's not in that graph-friendly form, all we have to do is put it in that graph-friendly form. Okay? All right, enough of that one. Let's take a look at that calculator worksheet, and if I remember correctly, we left off, we had done all the way down to here. I don't think we did number 8, but we did go over here and we did look at everything in this box. We finished by talking about if you get stuck somewhere, if you're in a menu or you're not quite sure what's going on, you can always get back to the home screen by hitting second quit. Okay? Now, so this was on Tuesday. A lot of people had to go up and get a calculator. Some people had to give, your firstborn in order to take a calculator for that day and that sort of stuff. So, if you haven't paid the $10, that's a pretty sweet deal to get to use a $100 calculator for $10. Not a bad deal at all. So if you haven't got one, please get one. If you're sitting next to somebody who's got one and you don't, just kind of share it for the time being, okay? Any questions there? And be careful with them also. Okay, so would you type this into your calculator, get an answer, and then compare it with your neighbor? So the sixth root of, let's see, what do we got? 1,771,561. Type that into your calculator, compare with your neighbor. You're good at Chase? Giddy up. What'd you get? 11? Yeah. Holy crap. Is it 11? Yes. Okay. So how do you type that into the calculator just so everybody's sure? How do you do a sixth root?
You do the 1 7 to the number, and then you
Okay, the little caret.
and then 1/6.
Okay, and if we're going to do 1/6, if 1/6 is going to be the entire exponent, we need to do it in parentheses, right? Because otherwise, the calculator knows the order of operations. What's it going to do first? Is it going to do the exponent or the divide? Okay, remember, PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, it'll do parentheses first. Okay, if we don't put the parentheses, so if I did this, so there's the right answer. If I just recall that and get rid of this and get rid of that. Okay, there are no parentheses. Next on the list is exponent, so it would be this number to the first power, which would just be that same number, divide by 6, and we get that ugly mess right there. Okay? All right. Now, what if I did this? So I'm going to recall this. Remember, you can hit second enter a couple times, and you can recall the last couple commands. In fact, if you watch here, I'm just going to keep hitting this. I've used this calculator quite a bit. I used this in my trig class. Okay? You can see the work that we did in my trig class yesterday. Okay? So I'm going to clear that off. I'm going to recall this guy. What if I changed that to like a 8? What do you mean by it's going to mess it up? Power. Yeah. That ugly number there was a perfect sixth power. It was a sixth power of 11. So now I've messed it up. What do you mean I've messed it up? It's going to be some wacko number, right? Okay. Can somebody guess what that wacko number is going to be? Yeah. That's what we're looking for. A little more than 11, right? Because if this number right here is a little more than that number right there, then the sixth root is going to be a little bit more. So we're looking for something that's a little bit more than 11. So look how close to 11 it is. You've got to go 6 decimal places before we even get a number. So it is just a tiny, tiny bit more than 11. Okay? Now, if I were to do this, if I were to take 11.00 and I just said 724, okay? So 724. Did I get enough of them there? And I raise that to the sixth power. What should I get? Okay, should get really close to that other number. Is it going to give me exactly this number right here? It's not. How come? Okay, the calculator is pretty darn accurate. It goes out to 10 decimal places most of the time on this one. Let's see, we've got 8 decimal places after that. Okay, so that's pretty darn accurate, but it still lopped off a bunch of stuff, or it rounded the stuff at the end. It's really, really close. Look how close it is. We needed an 8 here. It's 7.996. Okay, so one way we can fix that is by doing this. If we want to have a really accurate answer, okay, it just got that answer. I think I did this once last time. Does anybody remember how to use just the answer? Okay, second and the negative button. So I'm going to hit second and then this button right here. Okay, sorry, this projector's the worst one in the school. Okay, oops. And then we're going to raise that to the sixth. There we go. Works out perfectly. Okay, any questions there? All right, let's do a couple of these problems right here. Do these calculators, the 83s, the 84s, do they do fractions very well? Yeah. Okay, not quite as good as the ones that you may have used in middle school or junior high or something like that. Okay, those actually had fraction keys on them. Okay, not quite the same here. So let's put this problem in right here. So we're going to do 1 divided by 2 plus 1 divided by 3. Now, do I need any parentheses on this one? Did I type this incorrectly? Is this going to give me the right answer? It will in decimals, okay? So the answer to this problem is, if we were going to do this by hand, I'd have to get a common denominator. So this is going to be 3/6 plus, this would be 2/6. So the answer here is going to be 5/6, right? Okay, so hopefully the calculator will give us that answer. If we hit enter, this is what it gives us. Okay, now that's an ugly decimal, but these calculators do fractions, don't they? Okay, they're not quite as easy to work with because you have to go to the soft menus in order to figure this out. Hit the, let's see, I think it's the math button. The very first thing under the math button, it says arrow and a fraction. What that does is, so I'm already highlighting the 1. I'm going to either hit 1 or I'm going to hit enter. Okay, here's what it does. Takes the answer and makes it a fraction. 5/6. Okay. Now, if you were using one of those calculators that you had in middle school, it would probably just say the answer is 5/6 because you put it in as a fraction. It knows you probably want a fraction for an answer. Okay. So in this case, which one is more exact? Okay, the decimal here or the fraction? The fraction is more exact. And we usually like exact answers, so you'd probably want to use that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, would you put the next one in and get the decimal answer and the fraction answer? We'll do 7, 1 divided by 7, minus 2 divided by 5. Okay, I get that. I get negative 0.2571. That's a really ugly, ugly fraction. Okay, just to show you, if I put parentheses on this, might be a little more clear. I'm taking this fraction and I'm subtracting this other fraction. It's this minus this. Doesn't matter on this particular one. It gives me the same answer of negative 0.25, blah, blah, blah. And then I just change that to a fraction. It's kind of nice that it does that. Okay, 35th is probably not the nicest denominator to work with. Okay, but nonetheless, we get the right answer. Okay, any questions there? Okay, watch. This may be the silliest button on the calculator. Okay, this one right here. Change the answer to a decimal. Okay, well, if we wanted to do that, okay, watch what we could do here. So I got that one. Okay, it's already a decimal, so if I change that to a fraction. Okay. I mean, it's really easy to change to a decimal, so that's kind of a silly key to have. How would you do this one? How would you do number 11? What? Like a pro. Okay, let's hope so. Any ideas? There are two ways you could do it, yeah.
Would you do like 2 parentheses 3 divided by 4?
Okay, if we did 2 parentheses 3/4, what would the calculator think this is? Okay, it would think it's multiplication. It would think it's that problem right there. Okay, yeah. Okay. You could change it into an improper fraction, so we could do, let's see, that would be 2 times 4, that's 8, so this would be 11/4. This is going to be plus 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1, this is going to be 6/5, and then we could type it in, then it looks like 9 and 10. Looks like the two problems we just did. Okay, that's still, that works, okay, and that's a really good skill to practice because that's how you were taught how to do those when you were in elementary school, okay? Any other ideas? Don't we just want to take this number and add it to this number? Okay, and what does 2 3/4 really mean? It really means 2 and more. So here's what we could do. Okay, there are a couple different options here. You could take this and literally type it in, so we've got 2 plus 3 divided by 4. Okay, there's 2 3/4 plus parentheses 1 plus 1 divided by 5. Close the parentheses. Now, that will give you the right answer. That will give you the right answer. Do you need parentheses on that problem?
Yes.
Well, let's see. Let's hit enter. You get 3.95. You could take the time to change that to a fraction if you wanted to. Okay, but I'm going to recall that, and I'm going to get rid of the parentheses. So I'll delete that one, delete that one, delete that one, and delete that one. So did I need parentheses on that one? Nope. Okay, Can somebody tell me why I don't need parentheses on that particular problem? Yes.
The order of operations allows it to not be
Okay, I'll take that. That's not too bad. It's not extremely complicated. What makes this very, very simple as far as the operations that are involved? Yes. It's all addition. Okay, and because it's all addition, addition is commutative. I mean, nothing weird happens or anything like that. You just add this number to this number to this number to this number. Really, there are 4 numbers there. There's the 2, the 3/4, the 1, and the 1/5, right? Okay? And because it's all addition, it doesn't matter. But if I did this, if I subtracted them, there's the answer. Subtracted them with parentheses. And if I did the same thing, but I got rid of the parentheses, is this going to give me the right answer? Let's check and see. It's not. Okay? All right. Any questions there? Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the next part. Absolute value. Okay. What is absolute value? Very good. That's what we're looking for. A lot of people don't get that. So if you didn't know that, absolute value refers to distance from 0. Okay. A lot of people think, well, absolute value just makes things positive. That's not true. Okay. Absolute value refers to the distance from 0. So when we put negative 16 in absolute value, what we're saying is, how far is negative 16 from 0? And the answer to that, of course, is 16. Well, let's have our calculator do some absolute value for us. This can be very useful because absolute value is a tough thing to work with. And if we can get our calculator to figure some of this stuff out for us, then we're in good shape. So I'm going to clear this off, hit the math button. And you'll notice there are lots of menus here. You could go through and hit most of these buttons on the top 3 rows. They've got lots of soft menus attached to them. Okay, if I go over to number, the very first thing there is ABS, absolute value. Okay, notice this one is round. Okay, this next one is I part, that's the integer part. Okay, then the fraction part, integer, max, min. It's got a whole bunch of different functions that we could access here under this particular menu. We just want absolute value. We want the absolute value of negative 16. I'll close the parentheses. It tells me that it's 16. Okay, can somebody tell me what mistake I'm making here? Okay, so I'm going to go math, number, first one, and I'm going to do negative 16. Close the parentheses. Okay, there we go. Okay, that is a minus sign. Okay, now I believe, I haven't done this before, but I think the calculator is going to give us an error. Because remember, there's a difference between the negative, which is right here, and the minus, which is, sorry, the negative, let me make sure I get it right. Negative's here, minus is here. Okay, this calculator makes a differentiation between the two of those. So if I hit enter, it says I've got a syntax error. I didn't put the right thing in. So I'm going to go to that, and I'll just edit that. I'll just put a negative there, and that'll give me the right answer. Okay? Any questions? Okay. 13's easy, right? I'm just going to recall that so I don't have to grab the command, and I'm going to do a negative 174 plus a 32. Easy enough to figure out. Now, some commands you need to close the parentheses. Okay, it's just a good habit to be in. The calculator actually will figure it out if you don't. Answer there is 142. Any questions? Okay, would you do 14, get the answer, check with your neighbor? You can pretty much type it in just how it looks, right? So it's going to be 2 and then absolute value of negative 4 plus 12. And then we're going to subtract 6 times the absolute value of 2. Okay, everybody good there? Okay, flip the page over. Let's get to something a little more interesting. Okay, I'm hoping we can get through 15 and 16. That'll give us a really good head start on stuff. So it says solve each quadratic equation by factoring if possible, and then confirm your answer using the quadratic formula and your calculator. So we want to do both. So we first want to factor it, because remember from 1010, that's the easiest way to solve a quadratic is by factoring. Okay, the quadratic formula should work every single time. Okay, our least favorite would be completing the square. Okay, all right. So let's see if this works. Can we factor this first of all? Yep. There are numbers that multiply to be 6 that combine to be positive 5. 2 and 3. Okay. Good idea to always double check on these. So do those multiply to be positive 6? Yes. Do they add up to be positive 5? Yep. So we've got the right ones. This is set equal to 0. The only way that this whole thing could equal 0 is either this factor or this factor has to be equal to 0. And the quick way to do this is to just say, well, what makes x plus 2 equal to 0? The opposite of that number right there. Okay, and this one would be negative 3. Okay, so there's the answers. Okay, we've got those two. Okay, and then it says confirm your answer using the quadratic formula and your calculator. So let's use the quadratic formula. So that's going to be a, b, and c. So it's going to be negative b, so that's going to be negative 5 plus or minus, and then a big square root. Okay, it's going to be b squared, so that's 25. I don't mind if you skip that work right there. And then minus 4 times a times c. Well, a is 1 and c is 6. So this is going to be, let's see, a 2a on the bottom. Okay, and then I always have my students look at this and say, well, let's figure this out first. It's going to be 25. Is it going to be adding something or subtracting something? Subtracting, right? So we're going to do minus. It's going to be subtract 4 times 1 times 6. That's going to be 24. So this is negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 2. So that's going to be negative 5 plus or minus 1 over 2. So let's see what we get here. This is actually two parts. Negative 5 plus 1 over 2 and negative 5 minus 1 over 2. So this is, let's see, that's going to be negative 4 over 2, negative 2, and this is going to be negative 6 over 2. That's going to be negative 3. Okay? Any questions? Okay. We could have our calculator do this for us. If we were going to do this part right here, okay, so let's take this, whoops, let's take that and have our calculator figure this out. Okay, I realize this is an easy one, but it's a good one to practice on. Okay, what do I need to do first? If I'm going to type this expression into the calculator, what do I need to type in first? Very good. Okay, it's parentheses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in parentheses. So this is going to be parentheses because that gives me the top. So this is going to be negative 5 plus, I'll do the plus first, square root, whoops, square root is the second there, and then 25 minus 4 times, whoops, times 1 times 6. Close the parentheses. Okay, that closes the parentheses for the square root. What else? Another set of parentheses to close the parentheses for the top. That is the entire top. Notice I opened the parentheses, opened them again, closed them, and closed them. So that's the whole top, yeah.
Because there's, I mean, could you do brackets? Parentheses, or does it not matter?
This calculator doesn't do brackets. You got to keep track of how many parentheses you put in. Okay? And then we're going to divide by 2. There's that answer. How can I make it produce the other one? Yep. Just recall that. Instead of typing that whole mess in, I'm just going to do a minus there. And there's our negative 3. There are the two answers. Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right. As a quick reminder, does this one factor? How do you know it doesn't factor?
Oh, it can calculate it through, but it's not a for sure.
The 2 makes this a more difficult trinomial to factor. If you were in my 10-10 class, I called this a hard trinomial.
So it's very possible.
Okay. It might factor. Let's check and see. We take that number and that number right there, the coefficient in front of the squared term and the -7, and we multiply those together. That's going to be a -14. And then we look at the -14 and we look at the +4. Are there numbers that multiply to be -14 that combine to be +4? So 1 and 14 certainly wouldn't work. How about 2 and 7? Nope. Are there any other ways we could make a 14? No. So this doesn't factor. This is a prime polynomial. That means we can't factor it. That means the best tool we've got for solving this is the quadratic formula. So we type this into the quadratic formula. So this is what I'm going to write. We're going to write -4 plus or minus. This would be 16. Okay, and I'm even going to do this. This is going to be 4 squared minus 4 times a times c, so that's going to be a 2 and a -7. Don't lose track of that. All over 2 times 2. Is that all right? So this is going to be -4 plus or minus. That's going to be a 16 minus 4 times, well, let's see, that's going to be, am I going to be adding or subtracting? I'm going to be adding. This is going to be 4 times, let's see, times 2 times, well, this is kind of a pain in the butt, isn't it? Especially if you had to do a bunch of these. Okay. Now, we can type this into the calculator. It's going to get the right answer. Now, the nice thing is, let me move this over. I have this structure already set up, right? Okay. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit second, enter. Okay. And I need this to be a -4. I need that to be a 16. So I'm just going to type it in here. So this is going to be a 2. And this is going to be, now, is there enough room for me to put a -7 here? There's not, right? So how do I make room to put that in there? Does anybody remember? Insert. Okay, insert is above the delete key, so I'm going to hit second insert. I'll put a negative, okay, and now I'm going to change that to a 7, okay, and I'll delete the 6. Okay, and the bottom needs to be a 4, right? Okay, do I have that in there correctly? Got the whole top in parentheses. Got the -4. I've got the 16. I've got the -4 times 2 times -7. That is a negative, and then I'm going to divide the whole thing by 4, and there's the answer. Okay. That's one of the answers. So one of the answers is 1.12. What was the rest of it? 13. Okay. There's one answer. Okay. How do I get the other answer? Okay. All I do is recall that, and I'm going to change that to a minus rather than a plus. So the other one is -3 with the same decimal behind it, -3.1213. So there are the two answers. Okay? Any questions? Sure? Okay. All right. Let's see. I don't want you to write this down. I just want you to watch. I'm going to show you one more technique, and then we'll be done for today. Just as a reminder, if you get done with stuff, if you get your homework done, if you've got breaks during the day and you get it finished, bring something constructive to work on in class. If you bring some English or a book to read or something like that, if we've got time left, use that, especially if it's on a Q&A day or a day where, you know, I say, hey, we're just going to be going over questions or we're going to be doing something pretty simple. Okay, everybody clear on that for the future? Okay. So, don't write this down, I just want you to watch. Okay, this last answer should work in this equation right here. So here's what I'm going to do. Okay, since this is an x, I'm going to store this in x. So right down here next to the 1 key, look at right here. It says STO with an arrow. What that will do is we can store things in variables. So I'm going to hit store. It's going to take that last answer and it's going to store it wherever I want. Now, the easiest variable button to push is this one right here, okay, where we normally get the x's. Okay, can you see that? It's that guy right there. So I'm going to store it in x. Don't do this yet. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. But if you look at it, each one of these keys, so there's an alpha key right here, and above each one of these, you can see that there's a letter. Okay, so the A is above the math button, the B is above the apps button, the C is above the program button. Everybody see those? Okay, X is just the easiest one to access. We'll take care of the other letters in just a second. Okay, so here's what it just did. Notice that it typed that number again, the negative 3.1213. Okay, that's now stored in X. So I'm going to type this expression right here. I'm going to type 2x squared plus 4x minus 7. Now, if we did this work correctly, what should this expression equal with one of these correct answers plugged in? Should equal 0. Okay? Now, that's not 0. Or is it? Okay, what does that mean? Does anybody know what it means when your calculator spits out something like this? A number and then an E and a negative 12. Or a positive 42 or something like that. Anybody heard of scientific notation? Okay, or engineering notation? Here's what the calculator thinks the answer is. It thinks the answer is 2 with a decimal right here, and then because it's a negative 12, that means we move the decimal 12 places to the left. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Okay, how many zeros would I need here? Okay, I don't know if I got them right. There'd be 11 zeros there. Okay, your calculator is not perfect. It has lots of little algorithms in it that it works on and stuff like that. That's pretty darn close to 0. Okay, the calculator worked on it for a while. It said, you know what, that's close enough. I'm just going to spit out the answer. So you need to recognize when your calculator says something like this, it's essentially telling you that the answer is 0. Sometimes it will be perfect and it will say it's 0. Okay, but that's pretty darn close. Okay, any questions there? All right, so if you haven't seen this before, I'm hoping you think that this is at least moderately cool. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Using that store key and the alpha key, so let's make sure we know where those are. So I'm going to clear this off. Okay, the store key is right here and the alpha key is right here. The alpha key lets you type letters into the calculator. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to solve this problem again, but we're going to do it this way. Yeah, let's do this one. Okay, we'll do this guy right here. Okay, this is A, this is B, and this is C. So we're going to store those in the calculator. So we're going to hit 2, store. What letter do I want to use for 2? A. So hit alpha and it's the math button. Then hit enter. Okay, does everybody get that? Okay, next, B is 4. So we're going to do 4 store. We have to tell it what variable to store it in. So we're going to hit alpha and the apps button. That'll be a B. Am I going too fast or are we doing okay? All right. Hit enter so that it actually carries out that command and stores it. And then C on this problem is -7, so we'll hit store alpha C. Hit enter so it does it. Okay, now here's the awesome part. Remember we typed in the quadratic formula, we typed in this ugly mess right here. Okay, I started with a parentheses. And then the formula is, you've got it memorized, you've got that little Pop Goes the Weasel tune in your head and all that sort of stuff. Negative B, whoops. So I just hit clear because I made a mistake, alpha B, plus the square root of alpha B squared minus 4. Okay, now here's the cool part. A, C, close the parentheses, close them again. That's the entire top. That's the top of the quadratic formula. That's the numerator. divided by? What's the bottom of the quadratic formula? 2a. Now, I'm going to type in 2 and a, and my question for you is that correct? The answer is no. This will not give you the right answer. Can somebody tell me why it won't? Yeah. We want the entire top divided by the entire bottom. Whenever there's more than one piece on the top or more than one piece on the bottom, put parentheses around the top and bottom separately. Okay? So I need to come back here and I'm going to insert a set of parentheses around that. Now, that is the correct way to type in the quadratic formula. Now, the cool part is this is going to give us the correct answer. This is going to give us this one right here. And there it is. How do I make it produce this one? Recall that, make that a negative, and there it is. Now, once I have that in the calculator, remember we can take advantage of that deep recall. We can recall a bunch of commands. What if I wanted to solve this one? Let's say I had a bunch of quadratic formulas or quadratic equations to solve. I didn't want to factor all of them. I didn't want to use the quadratic formula on every single one of them. All I needed to do was get an answer. Get the two answers for each one of them. Okay? So what we could do is, once I have this expression typed in there, rather than having to type that in over and over and over again, what I can do is I can say, well, wait a minute. The only thing that changes from one quadratic to the next is what A is, what B is, and what C is. The structure of the problem is the same. So what's A on this problem right here? 1. What's B? 5. And this one? 6. So let's do this. Let's do 1 and store that in A. Let's do 5 and store that in B. And let's do, what do we got here? 6 and store that in C. Now, I've changed what A is and what B is and what C is on this calculator. If I want to use the quadratic formula, I don't have to type it in from scratch. I just hit second enter a couple of times. See how we're going through those last couple commands? And there it is. All ready to go. I know I've already got it set up right. I've got parentheses around the top, parentheses around the bottom. Okay, now before when I hit enter on this, when I had this expression up here, it gave me that 1.1213. There's our negative 2. I'll recall that, make that a minus, and there's our negative 3. Okay? So you can type variables in here, you can store variables, you can store numbers in there. Okay? We're going to do problems in this class where we're dealing with exponentials. And we'll have these ugly expressions, and it'll say ln of 2 divided by 3, and it'll say that's equal to k. And this is a really ugly number. It's a big, long, ugly decimal. Okay? Rather than use that big, long, ugly decimal, we can just say, hey, I've got this number stored in my calculator in k, and I'm just going to use that. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions? Okay. Raise your hand if you're done with 2.4 again. All right. When is that due? Tomorrow. Please make sure you're done. If you've got questions, stick around. I will let you go 5 minutes early this time. Again, in general, bring something else to work with. If you're staying on top of things and staying caught up, this is going to pick up next week. You're going to see some stuff that you probably haven't seen before, okay? And we also have Monday off, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Wait, this coming Monday?
Yep.